66 mince pies, 14,604 calories, 3 months of my life. This is the ultimate supermarket mince pie comparison video. And yeah, I know the Good Housekeeping Institute does an actual official comparative study of these, but did they make a YouTube video about it? Didn't think so. So, let's get straight to it. Over the past 3 months, I've bought every single type of supermarket own brand mince pie and tried them all, as well as feeding them to 5 unlucky guinea pigs. Important to note here, I only bought the standard supermarket mince pie option, not the luxury one or the basic one or any kind of flavoured or special or branded one, no, just the standard. So, how did I rank them? Well, I've taken note of the prices, the value for money, the aesthetics, and most importantly of all, I've fed them to a top team of mince pie experts in a blind taste test, and sampled and reviewed them all myself. Side note, this reviewing process turned out to be way too long and monotonous to actually put in the video, but for those hardcore fans of the channel out there, you can watch a grueling, uncut 13-minute video of me, a guy with very little sense of taste, reviewing 11 supermarket mince pies in excruciating detail, which is linked in the top right hand corner. But for those of you who are only in the mood for one long, boring video about mince pies today, let's introduce you to the contenders. In descending order of the quality of the logos of the supermarkets, they are Spar, Aldi, Co-op, Lidl, Morrisons, Tesco, M&S, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Iceland, and Asda. So, first things first, my pie connoisseurs were asked, without knowing which pie was which, to rank them in order of most aesthetic to least aesthetic, based purely off of first impressions. Their methodology was complex, but after much internal wrangling, they could finally agree on a ranking. In first place, the judges were impressed by Lidl's unique yet simple dual holly leaf design. Spar came in a strong second for their complex pointed star topping, and Sainsbury's occupied the final podium position with a simple but effective Christmas tree motif. Fourth place was taken by Asda, who improved on a standard star design by adding beams of light, and, speaking of standard stars, the highest ranked of these was the Co-op at number 5. Aldi's triumvirate of stars was enough for the judges to rank it in 6th place, and Morrison's snowflake pattern was only impressive enough for 7th, ahead of Iceland's 6-pointed Star of David design. M&S's let's put everything on it and see what happens approach only paid off to the tune of 9th place, whilst Tesco's attractive Russian nesting stars motif was offset by a lumpy and gaping pie lid, meaning it could only muster 10th place. Bringing up the rear was Waitrose, whose intricate snowflake pattern, even colouring and unique crimping led the judges to class it as too perfect, thus relegating it to last place. Now, for those of you questioning these rankings, it's probably worth mentioning at this point that the judges I used were clearly total idiots, and their opinions on mince pie aesthetics were completely wrong, as the correct ranking is this. They just failed to spot it. However, given these poor souls went through all the trauma of having a strange man force-feed them 11 mince pies and talk about it on camera, their confused opinions may be more understandable, and will be given equal weighting against my, far more correct views on this matter. If we take averages of their ranking and my ranking of the pie aesthetics, the first part of our ranking now looks like this. Okay, so taste is the next category, and this is definitely the most important one, which is why I'll entrust my pie minions with the important task of ranking it correctly, because I don't trust my sense of taste as far as I can throw it. I'm basically the worst person in the world for this job in that regard, but that's exactly why I've delegated the responsibility of actually taste testing them properly to a team of experts. So, I'll go through what the experts thought, see if I can add anything of value from my review, and then reveal the scores out of 10 that the experts granted each pie. Bear in mind that their reviews were done without knowing which pie was which, whereas mine weren't. So, in order of how many times I think I've probably been to each supermarket in my life, here are the results. Sainsbury's mince pie elicited such quotes from the judges as, "This is like some good stuff," and that the filling was more bearable than Asda's. The pastry was described as good. My review was more positive, with quotes like,
"Well, that's brilliant. For me, that's exactly the right kind of crust. It's just buttery enough, just crumbly enough. It's absolutely perfect."
The judges' scores averaged out to a solid 5. Tesco's challenger was described as confusing and giving off mixed signals. The word roller coaster was used to describe the consumption experience, which may not have been exactly the intention of the person who made it, especially when they hear the quote, "a bit iffy at the beginning, and then I kinda liked it, and then it ended in bitter disappointment." My view was that it was
quite doughy
and ended with,
"That's slightly disappointing" from Tesco, in my opinion.
but they shouldn't despair, as the judges' scores still averaged out to a 4.8, which was very generous in my opinion. The offering from the co-op got a not bad from the judges, as well as apparently containing no spices, just raisins. One judge was convinced that it tastes like a serene fruit loaf, to the extent that he insisted on giving it a serene out of 10, which I'll be honest has made the ranking slightly annoying, but it was countered by another judge who insisted it does not taste like a malt loaf. My entire review culminated in the rousing quote,
"Solid, entirely unremarkable, very, very average."
That said, the judges' scores came in at an overall 3.75 and 1/5 of a serene out of 10, which is pretty disappointing. Aldi's pie was lauded as quite average by the panel, and one member particularly liked the flavour of the filling, although another was adamant that there was too much nutmeg. I said that
it's quite crumbly, which I think works to its advantage.
And ended with,
"That's a solid mince pie, Aldi. Well done."
Aldi's pie makers should be proud of the 5.6 they received on aggregate from the judging panel. Lidl's alternative was a pie of two halves, with its crumbly nature not impressing the judges, but getting it into my good books. It was described as all powder and not good. The judges said that it clings to your teeth, and it was likened to a crumble but made only out of flour. One judge exclaimed, "What is going on there?" and it elicited the immortal quote, "I don't want it in my mouth anymore." In contrast to all this doom and gloom, my review ended in,
"Great stuff from Lidl there."
because I seem to like the whole flour crumble thing. It's up to you whether or not you choose to take the judge's average rating of 2.3 with a pinch of salt. Morrisons was the last mince pie that my elves were subjected to, and I think, to be honest, enthusiasm was waning at this point. Everyone was already 10 pies deep and could only taste Christmas, so it was not the ideal point for one of my judges to dramatically reveal that she didn't like mince pies. Due to these flagging spirits, the only noteworthy quote ended up being, "After so many shit ones, it seemed pretty good." In comparison, my review used words like,
"That is lovely."
and
Morrisons. Full marks. Love it.
so I reckon the judges' fatigue probably had quite a big effect and contributed to its entirely average score of 4.54. M&S got a simple but solid review from the judges, with comments like, "quite nice," "good pastry," and "well balanced." I recorded a whole review where I complained that it was a weird texture, but then once I'd gotten like 5 mince pies into the box, I had to revise my opinion because the rest of them were really nice, so I reckon I just got a dodgy one first time round. Still, the inconsistency within the pack is a mark against it, but that doesn't offset the very impressive 6.375 out of 10 it received from the judges. The judges were all hugely disappointed by the Waitrose pie given its picture-perfect exterior, going as far to call it the most disappointing thing I've ever experienced, and more disappointing than my A-level results. The words actual garbage were bandied around, and I think their communal review was best summarised by the quote, "I don't want to keep eating." I was also not a fan, with my first impression being,
There's something not quite right about that.
all in all, the biggest letdown of the bunch accumulated only a dismal 0.806 points on average. Incidentally, when I told the judges that that was the Waitrose pie, this was their response.
Of course! That makes sense.
A far more standard review for a standard mince pie came from Iceland, which was described simply as a classic school mince pie and okay. This was contrasted with my review, which was much more critical. I said,
That might be the driest mince pie I've ever eaten.
and ended with,
Disappointed, Iceland. Well, I didn't have high hopes, if I'm honest, but I'm still disappointed.
However, given that the judges seem to see it as entirely average, it receives an entirely average 4.3 out of 10. And lastly, Sparse Mince Pie proved very popular with the judges, with one proclaiming, "This is what a mince pie should taste like." Again, I had a totally different opinion, as I thought it was merely
Okay.
because...
It turns to dust in your mouth a bit.
But, as the judges were the experts here, it was their very impressive score of 7.5 out of 10 on average that will be counted for the final round. So that's it, I promise, all 11 mince pies comprehensively reviewed, and as the judges were A, doing the test blind, and B, have a better sense of taste than I do, it's probably reasonable that it's their scores that are counted without any input from me, which means our table looks like this. The next category to consider is cost, and this is a pretty simple one. The costs look like this, with Lidl's weird half P coming from only selling mince pies in boxes of 12 for some reason. However, I think that instead of just plugging this directly into our final ranking, we should add another taste element, because ultimately that's the reason people buy mince pies. So we will use a metric of my own devising, taste points per pound. Using this system, we can effectively see which pies represent the best value for money, which means we can take cost into account while still prioritising taste. After all, if a mince pie is very cheap but very terrible, it's definitely not worth buying despite the cost. So, with that in mind, here are the UK supermarket mince pies ranked by value for money. So, to make our final ranking. Having already weighted taste more heavily than everything else, now we just add all the rankings of each pie together to determine a final, cumulative ranking, and we can see which one is best. This is a tense moment. I've spent months of my life caring way too much about mince pies for this. You've wasted way too many minutes of your life watching a low-quality video about mince pies for this, so here we go. 11th place goes to Waitrose. This is hardly a surprise given how terrible it was to eat and that its beautiful exterior was not as appreciated by the judges as it should have been. Last place was somewhat inevitable. 10th place goes to the Co-op. This makes sense as it was pretty bad at pretty much everything, so realistically second to last was always going to be the ceiling for this one. There is no 9th place because 8th place is shared by M&S and Iceland, although they got there in such different ways. M&S's mince pie was the second tastiest but also expensive and clapped to high heaven, whereas Iceland was just solidly bad in every category. 7th place goes to Lidl, which again is a pie that tells two different tales. A beautiful exterior hides a pie so disgusting that even being the cheapest of the bunch couldn't raise it above second worst on value for money. 6th place goes to Tesco, which, although having a lid that only a mother could love, tasted pretty good and was cheap enough to snag a podium position on the value for money ranking. 5th place goes to Asda, which was pretty and pretty good value, but its decidedly average taste stops it from being any higher. 4th place goes to Morrisons, which tells a pretty similar story. Very much a looker, but only on the upper end of average for your tongue and your wallet. 3rd place goes to Sainsbury's, with really just solid scores all round. Not the best at anything, but a good attempt in all areas. It's interesting to note that there are only just 5 combined ranking points separating the big 4 supermarkets, meaning if those are your only choices, there's really not much in it. The second podium place goes to, drumroll please, I don't have the budget for a drum roll, so you literally have to do it yourself. It's Aldi, which was very good in all areas, but that means that the runaway winner of this inaugural supermarket mince pie fight to the death is Spar, who wiped the floor with everyone else by being a treat for your eyes, mouth and bank account. So, there, now you can all go out and stock up on Spar mince pies, safe in the knowledge that you're making the right choice. Assuming you can actually find one, obviously. You might have to spend your Christmas searching through petrol stations, but you'll be in such a heavenly land of mince pie bliss that you won't care.
That's it. You made it through the whole video. Congrats. I mean, unless you skipped all the way to the end to find the winner, which is honestly pretty reasonable, all things considered. But anyway, main thing is, have a great Christmas. Unless you're not watching this at Christmas time, in which case have a great July, or whatever it is. And yeah, just go off and watch a better video. Like, there's loads of them, just on the right-hand side, or down below for our valued mobile users. Come on, seriously, get out of here. There's nothing else. This is it. Bye.